the next thing me wants to be talking about is this. So this is, I guess you could say this is a little bit different to the types of things that I'd normally be talking about on this podcast. And it is that Neighbours has been axed for good as production admits defeat. So the production company Fremantle of Neighbours has struggled to find a place to pick up their show since Channel 5 has decided to end their contract with them. And it means that after nearly 40 years, Neighbours is going to be no more. Now, some of you might be thinking, and I may be wrong on this because honestly, I don't know how popular Neighbours is outside of the UK. I believe it's filmed in Australia. It's an Australian show. It is super popular in the UK, though. Very popular in the UK. I believe I heard somewhere that is not so popular in Australia. Somebody who's in Australia can let me know, but I believe it's not so popular in Australia. It hasn't been popular in Australia for quite a while, but it's very popular in the UK. Outside of the UK, outside of that, I don't know. So I'm guessing, possibly a lot of you might not even heard of Neighbours. You might not have heard of Neighbours. I'll tell you a little bit about it. As a soap opera, it is very cheesy. If you know anything about soap operas, yep. It's just as cheesy as that. It started in 1985. I used to watch this. It came on I remember it came on 5:35 because it was children's BBC, right? And that's where that showed all the cartoons and stuff. And then after that ended I keep saying 9. That ended 5:30, and then 5:30 was news break or news something. It was like a short news show that was kind of aimed at kids, it was a new show, but named that kids. And I'll talk about current. It doesn't matter. But then after that, 5:35 Neighbours. And yeah, so I'd watched Neighbours back in the day, and I watched it up until I think 2000. In fact, I know because it says it down here, 2008. Because that's when it moved to Channel 5. It was on BBC before then it moved to Channel 5. So I remember I stopped watching it when it moved to Channel 5. It's a dumb reason, I know, but it's just kind of one of these things where I just felt like I'm doing other stuff. I'm not watching TV as much anymore. There's a massive change. Maybe it's time for me to lay Neighbours down. So I guess technically I'm part of the reason why it's being cancelled now, because I wasn't watching it, and who knows, that could have factored into the reason, because that one person they needed to agree to renew the show was not there. Maybe that's the difference between Channel 5 renewing it and Channel 5 not renewing it. They were looking at the view numbers and they were just one below the view account that they needed. So who knows? That could have been a difference. I guess we'll never know now. But anyway, it was 2008 when it moved over, and that's when I stopped watching. And I kind of dibble, I might watch a little bit here and there, but mostly wasn't really paying much attention to it. But yeah, it was definitely something that I watched for many years, and it was a great show for many years. And it, like I say, a lot of you might not even heard of this show, but you most likely would have heard of some of the people who have been on this show. And it's kind of crazy to think that when I say some of these names, for those listening, it's on screen now. So if you're watching, you might see some names already. But for those listening, when I tell you some of these names, I promise you, I can all but guarantee that you'd be thinking, how does a show that has those people on it get cancelled? Because that's what I'm thinking. But let me tell you some of these names who've been in the show. Some of them were on the show for a while. Some of them only did a couple of appearances, 1 or 2 episodes. But let me tell you some of the names who have been on this show and then went on to do massive things. A few names here. The biggest one, I'm sure you know this one. If you don't know, you better get to know. Kylie Minogue. Kylie Minogue was on Neighbours back in I think it was her first or one of her first acting gigs, but she was on Neighbours as a regular for a while. Kylie Minogue, biggest pop star. Well, is she the biggest pop star? One of the most successful pop stars. She was the first female pop star to have a #1 album in 4 or 5 different decades. So yeah, very successful pop star. Kylie Minogue was on Neighbours. Jason Donovan was on Neighbours. Alan Dell was on Neighbours. Let me give you a few other names. Liam Hemsworth was on Neighbours. Chris Hemsworth was on Neighbours. Margot Robbie was on Neighbours. Delta Goodrem was on Neighbours. there are some people who, like I say, not all of them were mainstays. Some of them only did a few episodes, but people who got their first sort of acting gigs. Dave Bautista apparently was in an episode of Neighbours at one time as well. I read, I don't think it's in this article, but I read one other place. Yeah, in fact, it says here, yeah, Neighbours stars who have gone big, from Kylie to Dave Bautista. WWE superstar Dave Bautista. Drax was on an episode of Neighbours. This show had so many people who, like I say, some did a while, some were on loads of episodes, some of the few episodes, but they were relatively either unknown at the time or they were just starting their careers at the time that went on to do massive things. Guy Pearce was on Neighbours. How does a show that has produced some of the biggest stars on the planet end up being cancelled? That's crazy, right? That is nuts. But alas, that's where we are. That is where we are. So, if it wasn't for Neighbours, we may not have. No, I mean, there'd be somebody playing Thor in the MCU, but it might not be Chris Hemsworth. We might have somebody else playing Thor if it wasn't for Neighbours. If he didn't have that to back it up, or some acting experience, or whatever it may have been, who knows? Maybe Drax might not have happened as Dave Bautista if it wasn't. How much music we might not have heard because people made a little name for themselves and then went on to use that to promote their. Holly Valance was in Neighbours. Remember Holly Valance? Man, there's so many. A lot. There is a lot. This show has had some massive stars. In fact, let me click this. I think this one might list a bunch of them actually. But yeah, Neighbours stars who have gone big. Ugh, this bloody thing. From Kylie to Dave Bautista. So yeah, let me see if I get some names. Rada Mitchell. Okay, I don't know who Eliza Taylor is. My bad. I'm sure she's a nice person, but I don't know her. Bob Morley. Okay, I don't know him. I thought it said Bob Marley for a second. I was like, what? Bob Marley. It says Bob Marley, not Bob Marley. I don't think Bob Marley was on Neighbours. Probably not. I'm just gonna guess that he probably wasn't. I might be wrong, but I'm just gonna guess Bob Marley was not on Neighbours. But Bob Morley was. Margot Robbie. I said Margot Robbie. Yeah. Natalie Basinwaite. Alan Dell, Liam Hemsworth, Chris Hemsworth, Dave Bautista, Holly Valance, Delta Goodrem. Oh, Natalie Imbruglia was on Neighbours. Come on now. Russell Crowe, Gladiator, Robin Hood, a beautiful Russell Crowe. Jesse Spencer was in House. Remember House? Yeah, he was in House. He got his start on Neighbours. Well, maybe not his start, but I don't know. He was in Neighbours anyway. Say Guy Pearce. Is that it? Kylie and Jason. Yeah. Scott and Charlene. That was it. Yeah, was it Scott and Charlene? That was Kylie and Jason because they were like a couple on the show. And there was rumors that they were a couple in real life as well. I don't know if that's true. I don't know. Maybe not. It doesn't even matter anymore. But yeah. You know what? Real quick, actually, let me tell you a quick story about Jason Donovan. Or possibly it might not be Jason Donovan, but I think it was Jason Donovan. Stephanie by the way, Stephanie McIntosh was on Neighbours as well. And this story involves Stephanie McIntosh. Big up Stephanie McIntosh real quick. So I used to do motorcycle deliveries, right? And let me clarify, I delivered using a motorcycle. I wasn't delivering the motorcycle. So if you have a courier turn up at your house, sometimes businesses need to send things to people, other businesses, and letters and mail and things like that, and they need delivered urgent. That's what I did. So I'll pick something up, deliver it to somewhere, mostly around London, but sometimes you get deliveries outside of London and things like that. But yeah, I was delivering stuff on a motorcycle. Anyway, I get one package and I turn up to this place and it says it actually says Steph McIntosh on it. And I was watching Neighbours. Like I said, I was a big fan of Neighbours at the time, so I knew Steph McIntosh. I knew the name. Well, I knew it as Stephanie McIntosh. That was more in my mind. So I saw Steph McIntosh. It didn't really click with me right away. But I go to this place, knock the door, and some kid answers, and I say, "I'll delivery for Steph McIntosh," and he's running off and he goes, Steph, and then she comes to the door. And I'm like, oh, Stephanie McIntosh came to the door and I was delivering a package to her. And I was like, you know, you have those moments where you always feel like when you meet celebrities, you try not to I'm going to show you guys an image for the people watching. This is Stephanie McIntosh here. For the folks watching, you can see. But yeah, you know, when you meet celebrities, you always kind of feel like, and I've met celebrities before. It's not that I've never met celebrities before, but when you meet a celebrity, like usually it's like, oh, cool, you know, and that's pretty much you keep it moving. It is rare, at least for me, that I meet somebody and I'm like, oh, and I think it's a combination of the fact that I was I was watching a lot of Neighbours at the time, massive Neighbours fan. Her character was on TV quite a lot at that time as well, on the Neighbours show quite a lot at the time as well. So she was very much fresh in my mind as somebody who I see on TV. And then there's a surprise of, like I said, I saw the name, but it didn't really click with me. And a surprise of actually seeing her in real life. So I was like, whoa! And yeah, but you know, she was cool about it. I actually took a picture as well, which I still have somewhere. I still have it. I need to dig. I won't look for it now because I'm sure it's buried. I've got it somewhere. I didn't delete it. But yeah, she took a picture with her. But here's the thing, and this is what I mean about possibly Jason Donovan, is that I guess Stephanie McIntosh was in London at the time because she was doing some music gigs and things like that. Because I did see her on TV afterwards doing some songs, so I guess that's why she was in London. But anyway, as I'm leaving, I turn around and I'm saying bye and everything else, right? And I see this guy standing by the door, and I looked at him and I thought, you look kind of familiar. But then I understand. These things should have clicked with me at the time. I know. If you're saying, dude, really, you didn't. It didn't. Yeah, I know. I get it. These things should have occurred to me at the time. Like I said before, I'm not claiming to be any kind of expert. But I look back and I see this guy standing at the door and he's kind of smiling. He's not saying anything. He's just kind of smiling over, you know, just leaning by the door. But I thought he looked kind of familiar. But then I just kind of turned around and kept it moving. And then it was only like sort of after I left, I was kind of down the road at this point, quite far away down at this point. I thought, wait a minute. Was that Jason Donovan? Because it would make sense. I think Jason Donovan lived in London at the time. So it would have made sense that, you know, they're friends, I believe. Like, I think they're related, or I don't know if they're related or not. But I think they're friends, or somebody is cousin's daughter is a friend of. I'm not sure, but anyway, they know each other. So it would have made sense that if she's in London doing some gigs, she's staying with somebody she knows who lives in London. Makes sense, right? It makes sense. But it just did not occur to me that was probably Jason Donovan. So not only did I meet Stephanie McIntosh, could have met Jason Donovan as well. I mean, I didn't meet him. I saw him, possibly. Like I said, I can't say it definitely was him. For all I know, it could be just somebody that looks like him. You know what I mean? I didn't speak to him exactly. I just thought he looked familiar, and then kept it moving. But I did meet Stephanie McIntosh. She's an awesome person, and possibly saw Jason Donovan there as well. But hey, anyway, Neighbours was a great show. I definitely have a lot of memories with Neighbours, and it's a shame that it is going. It is really sad that it's going. But like I said before, I stopped watching it back in 2008, and I guess I'm part of the reason why it's about to be taken off the air. So anyway, big up Neighbours, big up to all the stars it created. It's a shame to see it go. Hopefully I could try and watch the last episode though, because apparently they're going to try and get as many stars back for the last episode. And if they do, boy, that could break some internets. I think that can break some internets, because you saw some of those names. You saw those names. If they can get even a small amount of those people to come back for the last episode, oh, big things, man, big things.